Welcome to the Words That Change Lives podcast, helping leaders, coaches, and small business owners to 10 times the impact of their message. Join us as we delve into the art of powerful language, enabling you to speak with unwavering honesty, communicate authentically, and create a lasting impression with every word.
Hello, everybody. In this episode, I absolutely loved my conversation with Phil Jones, who is the founder of the movement, Exactly What to Say. He's an entrepreneurial success story and the founder of 5 multi-million-dollar companies. He's a strategic advisor to pioneering leaders of the world's biggest brands, the author of 7 books, including the Exactly book series, of which we are talking about exactly what to say in this episode. 2 million copies sold. He is the producer of the most listened to audiobook of all time, which is Exactly What to Say, and I highly recommend listening to it as an audiobook. He's also the innovator of the highly coveted How to Persuade Audible production. He had his first business at just 14 years of age, incredibly entrepreneurial spirit, and he's the youngest recipient of the British Excellence in Sales and Marketing Award. He's a sought-after advisor of global brands, creator of the most listened-to non-fiction audiobook, and a firm believer that almost every problem could be prevented or solved if more people just knew exactly what to say. And the reason why I loved this conversation is because it's completely aligned with everything I do. It's all about consciously harnessing the power of your words, adapting and tweaking, using things in good timing, practicing the craft of verbal articulation, or also could be written articulation, to get the results you want. Whether you are in sales, whether you run your own business, whether you need to generate leads, whether you need to influence people in the workplace, you're a leader in an organization, you can harness the power of your words in very specific ways to get the results you want. And I highly recommend getting the book. So I've got it in paperback, but getting it as audio will enable you to listen to it over and over again. Very simple strategies in the book, but incredibly powerful and effective. And we talk through the strategies in this episode, as well as Phil's esteemed thoughts on leadership, dynamics, conflict resolution, influence, manipulation, persuasion, all of the things that we all need as human beings to live more successful, more harmonious, more productive lives. I was so excited about this episode. It was a fantastic and interesting discussion. Really tested my podcasting skills, my interviewing skills, because of the sheer way that it changed in direction. But it was very exciting for me to be a part of that. And I can't wait for you to listen to the episode today. Just a quick note about this episode. It's a fantastic conversation. However, as Phil was in New York, the audio isn't as good as we would want it to be. So please bear that in mind, but know that even though the audio might not be perfect, the content absolutely is golden stuff. So keep listening. So Phil, I want to start with a question because we have similarities in the areas that we work. And for me, a lot of the work I do is really bedding in this type of behavior through a lot of practice in terms of how we can consciously harness the words that we use. And some people come on a one-day workshop, influencing skills workshop, and they think that that's it.
Right.
But it is not the case. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, given your extensive experience in this area, of what that means to you and what you think about that.
Yeah, for sure. And for context is I've been in the arena of training persuasion, influence, sales, communication, conversation skills for bordering on what now is 20 plus years, so 23 years or something, which feels like forever. But equally, people have come and said, I'm coming on this course because what I'm looking to be able to do is to master the skills of communication or master the skills of influence. And I'm like, whoa. Hold down, Tiger. There is no way that you are going to learn to master these skills in this short window. And in fact, the decision to even give consideration to these skills is the consideration to go pro, is what we're talking about. It's like, how do you go from being like a competent amateur to decide to go pro? And once you decide to go pro, the decision is that this becomes a practice. That it's never something you master. It's never something you get to a point of completion on. It's an obsession that has a relentless practice at any given moment where you can practice on repeat, because you care with a deeper level than most about helping other people make smart decisions.
Mm-hmm. And that works in any type of environment, right? And I know that you work within lots of different environments. There's been, sales environments, real estate environments.
Yeah, about 800 different industries, 60 different countries, 5 continents. We've had a lot of exposure to different groups in different arenas.
And this applies to absolutely any environment. And I think for me, given that I used to be someone who didn't speak up, who was very shy, who wasn't able to use my words or articulate myself, that it has taken so much practice of retreading what I call like new paths in the meadow.
Yeah.
Those pathways in our brain to get to work the muscle to be able to use our words differently for a better result. But some people say, you either got it or you haven't. It's either something that you're naturally good at or you're not, and it's always going to be a challenge. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, nobody is born with high-level skills. 0 people, right? We're all born largely pretty incompetent. And then what happens is your environment nurtures a number of new skills inside of you. But I think there are mindsets and beliefs that come through cultural environments. I think there are things inside our DNA that make us naturally one of a number of things. And it's easy to say I'm not naturally gifted at blank. Like, it's an easy cop-out. The commonality between anybody that has high levels of excellence in any area is that they, number one, they care more than others. And number 2 is they're strategically curious about how things can get done and how they can help other people. Now, that's a heavy lift. And not everybody has the appetite to truly care about other people's outcomes to a big enough degree. And not anybody is curious enough to understand somebody else's context before they jump to conclusions. So it's easy to jump to, I'm not influential, I'm not persuasive, I don't like confrontation, I'm not prepared to be able to speak up, etc. Like, because you can put yourself in a safe little box and say that's for other people. Everybody can do it. You just have to choose to be brave enough to be able to do it. And the challenge that many people have is that they think that being assertive or being confident or being influential or being persuasive means being aggressive, means being rude, means being bold to a point of attention seeking or even, having a degree of aggression about all of their communications. They're like, I don't want to be that, but I do want to achieve these outcomes. But I don't want to be that more than I do want to achieve these outcomes. Yet the miss is particularly in modern society, winning in influence and persuasion is not about I win and you lose. It's not about winning the argument. It's about taking effective leadership in conversation to create outcomes and where both people win. And the skill that is missing is the ability for people to be strategically curious with their questions. Is how can they speak up with confidently well-formed, curious questions, as opposed to speak up with bold and aggressive statements. And once people realize that curiosity is the superpower, and that by being strategically curious is actually, they can front up to some very, very big things in a completely rejection-free way, they're like, oh, I found new levels of strength. Mm-hmm. That's a skill, and it's a learned skill.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I'm thinking about, as I learned and I made my way up the ladder into senior leadership when I was in the corporate world, it was curiosity that enabled me to build relationships. And one of the models I use in my influencing training is the push-pull model, whether you're either pushing your agenda on someone using influencing techniques or you're pulling. And being curious is about asking questions, right?
Absolutely. And we've often heard that you need to ask more questions, like probe, dig deeper, and all this other ugly language. It isn't about asking more questions. It's about asking better questions. Mm-hmm. And questions with purpose and questions that are helpful to show the other person that you care. And in my work, one of the things that we teach people is to never, ever, 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 ever advise anybody to do anything unless you can say these words first. And the words I advise people to say first are the words because of the fact that you said. Because of the fact that you said blank, blank, and blank, then for those reasons would recommend blank, blank, and blank. Because in the medical industry, they say prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. The same is true in every other area of life. Yet many of us are out prescribing advice to others. So a challenge to every listener right now, and I mean this seriously, and it's probably the only direct piece of advice that I'm going to give through this entire interview, yet it's kind of ironic really, is the advice I'm going to give is, could you live an entire day of your life giving approximately zero advice? Like spend a whole day only looking to further understand somebody else's circumstances, only looking to garner the other person's context with a greater level of clarity, and through which you'll probably problem solve significantly greater than you will trying to find solutions for other people's problems. Because if you show somebody you understand their problem, they'll trust you with a solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you try to sell somebody on your solution, they're probably going to say that ain't the problem.
Because at the end of the day, we all want to be heard, right?
And we do this as parents, though, right? Is I remember a very specific point in time in my life relatively recently with my what was soon to be 17-year-old daughter, and we're stood around the island at the holiday time, in Christmas time, and she comes to me for some advice. At least that's what I thought she came to me for. She was actually just expressing something that was happening in her world, and out comes Dad Advice Monster. And what left my mouth, which still beats my mind, particularly given my area of expertise, is what left my mouth was the words, "when I was in your shoes." I then looked down at this girl's feet and realized I've never worn footwear that looks like that for a single day in my life, and caught myself very quickly being like, you are completely non-qualified to deliver advice on this subject matter. So just hung out and asked a few questions for 25, 26 minutes, and she ended up choosing to do a version of what I would have probably advised her to do anyway, but I had no part to play in the advice. Yeah, I was becoming that advice monster, and I think as leaders, we sometimes think that that's our job, is to be the advice monster, is to be the solver of everybody else's problems, to fix everything for people, to show them the way, to tell them how to be able to do things. And that's a form of leadership, yet it hits its limitations remarkably quickly.
Well, it does, because if we think about what, the power there, we might be rescuing if we're giving advice in that way, rather than becoming the coach to turn the victim into someone who can be enabled and empowered to solve their own problems.
Correct. And it's a slower process to teach people how to think for themselves. However, once they know how to think for themselves, then they can act for themselves and find new levels of confidence. And it's a big, big job. It's like parenting an entire community.
Mm. Well, it is, of course. And, a lot of us, actually feel that is the role that we might slip into by default in these sorts of situations. I'm just thinking of some of the leaders I'm coaching at the moment, where they're coming up against similar problems due to personality difference and personality clashes within their leadership groups. And actually the advice that it's not the advice that you've given, or what you said there in terms of the approach to take, can just provide a much more non-combative, neutral environment.
You can create a space that's big enough that can be inclusive to multiple different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you narrow down the space, you create needs for things to be right and be wrong. When somebody needs to be right, it means it's at somebody else's expense. By alternative, we should be focused on achieving the right result. And the right result can be achieved when you create a big enough space for all the ideas to exist in together. And for decades in my work, one of the things that we taught people is that if you slow the process down, you can speed the outcome up. The same is true in high levels of conversion in sales, as it is to being able to avoid objections, as it is to be able to take a big cultural initiative change through a big organization. And I got so much validation for this when I got to work with the United States Marines last year. And one of the things that they shared with me is that when they go into a hostile or a high-stakes environment, is that they have a mantra that slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that'll do. That works. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. And I think as leaders, it's so easy to be in a rush all the time. It's so easy to think fast, fast, fast. Let's get this solved. Go, 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 go. And then we wonder why we have confusion in the workplace, why we experience burnout, why we have cultural imbalances, why we have individuals feeling like they're not being heard or they don't have a space. It's because we're forever in sprint mode. But the trouble is too many of those people are sprinting in circles.
Yeah. And again, where's that pressure coming from? It's coming from, stakeholders, whoever those stakeholders are, third parties, ambitious strategic aims, cutting things down, reducing things out.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time consulting in big organizations, helping overcome big challenges. And most of the work is actually helping them realize that the problem they asked me to come and help them solve is not the problem they need solving.
Mm.
That's where most of the work comes in, because they're looking for help with blank, but that's just an outcome they're hoping to achieve. They're not yet aware of what the cog in the machine is that outcome is presented from. And I give a simple example. As a keynote speaker, one of the things I often joke about from stage is the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment where you're saying it. And I'll deliver it in front of a large audience and it gets a laugh line. Yet it isn't intended to be a joke. It's actually deadly serious. And the word that is worthy of the most focus in that is the word moment. People think like getting ready for conversations is about memorizing words. It's about rehearsing scripts. It's about having access to key information. No, it's not. It's about mastering moments. And there are hundreds of known moments that we step into on a daily basis that could have been better prepared for, that could have been better crafted. And much of what the work we do with leaders is to say, well, I understand that's the outcome you're trying to achieve. Where are the moments that exist inside your conversational tracks, inside the organizations that you're working with, that you are most likely to influence those outcomes? And the simplest of examples was a big real estate team the other day that said, we wanted to drive greater productivity through all of our agents. I'm like, I've got it. I'm like, well, where are the moments that you're most likely to drive increased levels of productivity? And they say, I don't know, it's all of them. I mean, we have our one-on-ones, we have our monthly meetings, we have our annual get-togethers, we have our performance reviews on a line manager level, we have our morning huddles, etc. We have our daily interactions when we bump into people in the office. These are all moments where we could influence the productivity of our agents. I'm like, I get it. Those are all important, potentially high-impact moments. But which of those moments is most likely to impact productivity on a daily basis? To help your agents have clarity about the tasks they should be focused on, help get the reward and recognition to be able to drive the outcomes that they're looking to be able to achieve individually and collectively. They thought about it for a few seconds and they said, it's probably our morning huddle. And I said, okay, answer me this. Your morning huddle, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like most mornings, most people turn up, and 10 being it's the greatest huddle in the world, how would you rate your morning huddle? And they're like, it's a 3. So let's get this right for a second. Your goal is to increase the productivity of all of your agents. And you've self-identified that the number one area that you are most likely to impact the productivity of all of your agents is your morning huddle. And your morning huddle is currently a 3 out of 10. Please explain to me why you're focusing on any other area of communications, performance, and development until you move that 3 to a 7, 8, or a 9. Because what's going to have the biggest impact on the outcome is defining the moment where you're most likely to achieve that outcome. And if you want further evidence that moments are important, is how many relationships are sabotaged because somebody tried to have the right conversation at the wrong time.
So many.
Leaders tapping people on the shoulder with the got a minute to sneak attack somebody with some terrible feedback. Or
timing is, it was one of the reasons why I left the corporate world. I actually had a really bad performance review in the middle of a canteen and had a panic attack and ran out. And that was it. That was me leaving the corporate world.
So defining and elevating your competence in moments is really the job.
Mm-hmm. I want to focus in on the skill for a minute and thinking about some of my audience that are listening where they have to sell every day in order to generate leads, win business, sign coaching clients, whatever it might be. And that they, again, may not naturally feel like they have the skills to sell. And within the coaching industry, I'm sure you're aware, there is a lot of corruption that goes on. There's a lot of people that say they do something and then don't deliver. Or
there's a lot of promises. Hope is often for sale. People are very happy to buy hope.
There we go.
People buy the promise to a fast pass of some form of guaranteed riches and fame for, and whether it's coaching or whether it's guaranteed weight loss or whether it's the fastest way to investing for success is strangely enough, there are people that will keep looking to be able to roll the lottery about getting success. So I get it. Yes. There is a challenge in our industry of the helping business. Yeah. And I think much of that is because there's next to no criteria to be involved as a professional, and there's a low barrier to entry, there's high potential earnings, which means that it's a very busy market.
But with that, I certainly always strive to be ethical, authentic, honest, and deliver what I promise, right? And I know for a lot of people, the word influence or thinking about how to influence can sometimes feel manipulative. And where do we cross the line from influencing other people to manipulating them?
The line is really clear to me. The line is drawn at the point of integrity. So I think it was Peter Parker or Uncle Ben that first said it, that with great power comes great responsibility. The same is true with all of these skills, right? Like you can use them for good or you can use them for evil. Just like martial arts, you can use it for self-defense or to bring down a conflict, or you can use it to inflict pain on somebody. The same is with influence and persuasion skills. And some people use it like to create change, like a Martin Luther King, and other people will use it to be able to brainwash people into believing that some form of sadistic behavior is okay. Right? They're the same skills. I'd like to believe, though, if more good people had those skills, we would create more good in the world. And I think the trouble is that good people are associating influence with manipulation, yet actually they're open to influence themselves on a daily basis. They use these skills in areas of their life. I've met so many people that are like, oh, I can't sell anything. I'm like, well, how did you get the kid to eat the peas? Right? And they're like, oh, yeah, I did that. Or it's like, well, how did you get your mum to finally agree to be able to do blank? And they're like, oh, yeah, like I am doing this. The trouble comes, I think, when money gets involved. This is where it starts to get complex. And that puzzle is actually often a deeper issue because people don't believe they're worth it. If you're not convinced, you cannot convince. If you do not believe you're absolutely worth the sum of money you're asking somebody to pay, please don't expect somebody else to believe it. And this is the underlying issue sometimes because people are happy to help. They're happy to use influence skills. It's like people say, oh, I couldn't ask anybody for money. I'm like, you couldn't. I'm like, no way could I ask people for money. I'm like, well, let's just change the circumstances. There's a 4-year-old child in a hospital right now needs a heart transplant. The heart they need is currently 350 miles away. We can get it here on a helicopter, but the helicopter is going to need $10,000 to get here. I don't have $10,000. You don't have $10,000. Who do we ask for $10,000? They're like, let's go. Let's go. Happy to ask as many people as we like when the purpose changes. So what this means is to influence with integrity, to sell, to ask for money, is you have to get to a point that you know with certainty that the help you're going to provide to the other person is worth an over-indexing number versus the sum of money you're going to ask for. And the number I ask people to try to get to is, can you get to a point that you're going to deliver 10 times more value than the money you're going to ask for? So if you've got a $1,000 coaching service, you best be able to get to a point that you can create a $10,000 problem that everybody believes that we can solve with this program. And if that's true, and you believe it and they believe it, the $1,000 is a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like with a keynote talk, right? Giving a keynote talk inside an organization, that's kind of like, and you want to charge what, 10K plus for the keynote. What type of problem are you solving at what monetary level? It's a similar sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and here's my question framework into a keynote environment. I charge an obnoxious sum of money to speak on stage for 60 minutes. I know where I came from. I used to wash cars for a living. I used to charge £3.50 to wash somebody's car, and it took me about an hour. And now I get paid thousands of times that number to be able to deliver a speech on stage. How do I get to position that? Is knowing the problem I'm trying to solve. So people reach out for a speech, and I'll respond by saying, well, what is it about me and my work that makes you think I'm a good fit? And they'll tell me and do the work and sell me on me. And I say, well, what is your experience of working with a paid professional speaker? And they'll tell me. And they'll say, last year we booked Tony Robbins or Mel Robbins or whatever. Or they'll say, no, this is the first time we've worked with an external professional. Whatever they might say, I garner new context. And then I say, so how many people are in the audience? And they'll tell me. There's like 1,300 people in the audience. I'm like, great, 1,300. And of that 1,300, how many of them impact the commercial results you achieve as an organization? They're like, somewhere like all of them. I was like, just help me understand the opportunity of us getting this speech right. What is the average person in that room losing for you in a weekly basis in missed sales opportunities? Are they leaving $1,000 on the table, $5,000 on the table, $10,000 on the table a week? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, yeah, maybe average person across the board, certainly at least $5,000 in missed sales opportunity a week. I'm like, there's 1,300 of them losing you $5,000 a week. Got it. And how long has that been going on for? Is that a new thing? They're like, no, it's been for as long as I've been here. I'm like, how long have you been there? They're like, I've been here 7 years. I'm like, so for 7 years, you've had 1,300 people losing you $5,000 a week. How much longer are you going to let that run for? They say, I guess that's why we're talking to you. What I do, I just create a giant freaking problem. So if my fee is a scratch on that 1,300 times 5,000 times 52 times 7, then I'm great value for money.
Right. And I think it's such an important thing because there's going to be a lot of people listening to this. A lot of people in my world are aspiring speakers, aspiring corporate speakers. They might be doing talks for free at the moment or for lower sums, and they really want to be earning good amount of money, but not necessarily understanding that exactly as you've just described it.
Yeah. And you learn that through experience. Like, I've been paid to present over 3,500 times. And what is useful when you're in that journey is you always want to be better than your fee. The fastest thing that can kill a career as a professional speaker, coach, consultant, trainer, whatever, is, like, he or she was pretty good, but for what we paid, we expected more. Mm-hmm. Like, you'd be game over reputationally from that. So the win is, like, you're on a lineup with 3 others, and you're the only person that didn't get paid and you stole the show. That's called awesome. Right? Like, you don't want to be one of the other 2 people. Like, the free guy, like, crushed it, and the 2 dudes that got paid were less than. Reputationally speaking, that person is on the up and those people are on the down. So you always want to be better than your fee. And, I've had the joy of being a brilliant free speaker, a brilliant £250 speaker, a brilliant £500 speaker. I loved the day I got my first 1,500. I loved the day that my pricing went from GBP to USD. That was a fun time to be able to move and bounce from 1,500 to like 5,000. And it's like, and then you keep working through the levels. But the levels are created in your own mind. Because once you get past a certain level of professionalism as a speaker, coach, consultant, or professional athlete, or anybody in that, is the price points past entry level to pro. Everything past that is, do you have the confidence to walk away from a lower number? Mm-hmm. And do you have the acceptance that the marketplace has fewer opportunities as those numbers go up?
And it comes with the sort of utility and authority and credibility building from what you've stacked behind you before.
But there aren't many $400,000 gigs that happen each year.
No.
There are a handful of gigs that have those kind of fees, but you could raise your price to that. But you can't raise your price to that if you accept 55. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and you can't get a $75,000 speech if you keep saying yes to 15.
Get you. Yeah.
So some of the point becomes like, I'm brave enough to walk away from a number that once upon a time I'd have said heck yes and jumped through like burning fires for. And that's where fee growth comes from in this space, is the confidence to walk away for less, even though less is still a lot. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good point. And we think them coming back to the words that we use and being bold and being courageous. And I listened to a podcast that you were speaking to someone recently about talking about everything that we're talking about in this book, how to use words and how to harness your words in such a way that you get the results that you want, does take courage, does take practice, and does take you to exposure to the thing that you need to do in order to get more confident with it.
Absolutely. But I think there's a fair metaphor to play into, and for those that are listening to our conversation right now, is think about like that big ask. What's often been talked about as the big ask or the big question, like someone's popping the big "Will you marry me?" question. When that big question is being asked, how big a question really is it? Because not many people are asking that question with 50-50 odds that the other person might say yes. They're not even asking you with 60-40, 70-30, 80-20. There's some degree of certainty that this is in alignment with what both of us want, that this is the direction of travel that we're going in. There's been enough curiosity in the relationship to that point that the context is understood by both parties. There's been enough empathy shared that we're in alignment with the direction of travel that we're going in our life, and this is a shared goal, a shared vision. So the courageous part of being able to make the big ask is just the invitation to invite somebody to take the next step when that next step is clear for both parties. It's leading a dance. It's not trying to sell people dance classes. It's that we're all on the dance floor. You're just taking the responsibility of leading it. And that's something that I think can help people feel a little safer on this, because it isn't asking people to do big things. It's getting into the mess with people to understand the problem, to see if there's an alignment in a shared vision and a shared commitment to go on a journey together, and then taking the responsible leadership position to map out the next steps. That's all it is. And you can be nervous about making that ask, just like anybody that's asked the will you marry me question, I'm sure is nervous about it. But you're nervous about getting the moment right. You're nervous about, like, did you pick the right environment? You're nervous about, like, is it too soon? Am I you're 0.7% nervous. Your nerves are about getting it right, not about it being the direction of travel that we are looking to go in.
And the nerves are all about potential consequence and fear of rejection, I guess, as well.
Because you give a damn, and because you're emotionally invested, and because it matters, which is just because we're human.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about that in the context of the people that I work with currently within global organizations, and the culture has bred a reticence to speak up, to put ideas forward because of a nervousness around being rejected or being overlooked or just not being heard at all.
Right.
So in a number of organizations I work within, the culture, through probably environment, longevity of the organization running, different leadership within that organization, has bred a feeling that it's not okay to speak up, or that if you do, something bad might happen, or that you might be just overlooked and not heard anyway. And this is, I'm generalizing, a little bit here, but it is something that comes up quite a lot within leadership, within organizations. And of course, there's lots of ways around there. There's lots of things you can do, but I just love your thoughts on that and your experience on that.
It's a tough one, right? Because you want to create environments that people can speak up. You also need sometimes for people to just get their head down and do their job. And you want people to have a voice, but you also don't want to lead a business through a committee. And you're not looking to be able to burn resource on debating the direction of travel with dozens of people every time that a decision needs to be made. So there's all of these forces that are coming together as to saying, like, what's the right way of being able to make this a cultural environment that it's okay to speak up. I think the challenge around, like, creating an environment to speak up is people think that encouraging people to speak up is encouraging people to disrupt, encouraging people to be destructive, and speak up about bad news.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a very negative
and that's
set of actions we're asking people to do more of. And leaders don't want it to happen because it's going to derail the plan, and people don't want to do it because they're going to feel like that they're going to be victimized for derailing the plan. So the only way that you can make a speak-up culture start to better work is to everybody be speaking up all the time, and you create multiple safe spaces for people to be able to share things that they feel like expressing. You also have to create an environment that is okay to express a thought, but not every thought that gets expressed is going to get acted upon, or not every thought that is going to get expressed is going to create a change in favor of what you spoke up about.
And that's okay.
It's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
What it needs to be is that everybody speaks up with no fear of consequences.
Yes.
Negative or positive.
And also that there could be a structure for speaking up, a way in which it is, one of the push strategies is I give you my idea backed up by reasons.
Sure.
So, I'm going to put it forward, but I'm also going to explain why I think this is a good idea or why I think this isn't a good idea. Where's my evidence? What's my reasoning behind this, rather than just throwing a negative into the pot.
My friend Dan Martell teaches a system called 131, which is like, if there's a puzzle in the organization, well, bring me the singular puzzle, bring me the 3 ideas that you think could potentially solve it, and then bring me the one that you think is the best in those 3 ideas and why. And you can bring anything to him with a 1-3-1 mindset.
Like that.
We teach a formula to people, even as an outreach formula, to either win business from competition in a crowded marketplace, or to garner useful feedback from existing clients so that you can sharpen your value proposition. It's a 2-question questionnaire. The first question is, what 3 things do you like best about working with us? So you see, if I was to share that with a past client, what 3 things did you like best about working with us? I learned the good news first.
Mm-hmm.
Having learned the good news first, I can then ask the question, if there was one thing you could change, what would the one thing be? And they'll tell me the truth, because the truth is contextualized, not just as a bad news thing. So you want to create a culture of allowing people to speak up, have them speak up about both sides of the coin, and they'll do it more freely. Oh, what 3 things you like best about working for us in the ABC department? Well, I love this, I love this, I love this. Okay, now that you've shared that with me, if there was one thing you could change about working here, what would that be? Let's get that. But if everybody knows they're being asked the same 2 questions, then what we've got a body of evidence that leadership can then make decisions on, as opposed to using opinions to shape decision-making.
I love that. And also how we approach disagreement. Yes. that it can be productive, and Brené Brown calls it rumble culture. And I spoke to author Ian Leslie about productive disagreement a few episodes ago, and how we can actually, create a culture where we feel okay to come into a disagreement, but in a curious way.
Outcome, though, that you're looking for when alignment is the goal is to reach agreement. And agreement doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with what you think. It doesn't even mean that I agree with what you're doing. It means that I agree that this is the direction of travel that we're going. And you look at many of the relationships that exist in our life. Like, we don't love everything about our spouse. We're not in complete alignment with everything they do and everything they think and every action they take. But we reach agreement to disagree about certain things. And that provides acceptance. So agreement leads to acceptance. Acceptance leads to movement. And you have to create an environment that says that we can debate ideas constructively. And one thing we share, I even share it inside my marriage often, is like, there are good ideas behind bad ideas. So we're going to work through ideas for change and not be like, that's a stupid idea. It's acceptance that behind that stupid idea could be another idea and another idea and another idea. You don't get from bad idea to good idea. You go through a greater understanding of the problem.
And it is in the nuances of the words that we use that can pave the way for that being a more productive conversation, which is where I think it's a good opportunity to talk about your book. For those who don't know exactly what to say, is a very different type of book in my eyes, because it's, I think you described it somewhere as like a recipe book.
Yep.
And if you read it once through, you could be fooled into thinking that it's too simplistic.
Yes.
But actually, it's not. And you can go really deep into each of these simple concepts and get so much out of them.
Correct.
And I just want to talk about a few things in sort of the examples, and we can sort of dive into some of the things in the book. One of which is from the discussion we just had around disagreement, and where we can be okay that the things we don't agree on, but we can also find a thread of common ground, or we can find threads within our language of things that we can relate to. And there's one concept in the book, and I'm just trying to think of exactly the wording. I bet you're a bit like me. I bet you're a bit like me was one of them, where if you're having that type of discussion, those types of words can actually join a thread of common ground, of harmony, of a little bit of trust in those sorts of situations, right?
100%. And you could say, I bet you're a bit like me, I bet you're a lot like me, or I can imagine you're a little like me. Is what we're doing is that we're using words to create a collective agreement, and you're gaining a body of evidence to support the outcome that you're looking to be able to drive forward with that maybe didn't exist in that conversation.
Yes, exactly.
So if I give a very tactical application of it, is if you are a premium service provider and that you are fearful that somebody's going to bring an objection up, that they might choose a discount alternative, there's a guy down the street that's cheaper, You could say, I bet you're a lot like me, that you value experienced professionals in situations where the outcome is serious.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, yeah, I do. Now that they've said that, they cannot hire an amateur when they're looking for a professional outcome. Like, you've got a piece of evidence. But in a leadership conversation, you can even use it to say, I bet you're a lot like me, and you're not all that comfortable in having these kind of conversations.
Right.
And then just like an acceptance that this is not fun for either of us. Got it. Okay, we can work this through. Or, I bet you're a lot like me, and you're looking for answers on something that seems very clouded and not that clear as to where we go from here. Okay, so you don't know what you're doing either. Got it.
It just automatically just brings down, it sort of settles down a feeling, and there's some unity there, there's some trust.
You cannot make good decisions when you're feeling high levels of anxiety. And in leading conversations, sometimes the first thing to be able to do is just to lower the temperature before we start to explore the problem. And people want to operate in the black and the white space in decision making. The fun happens in the gray space. So if you can lead a conversation, you can create a safe space as a gray space that becomes a play space. We can create new normals. Like, that's what we can do and people want to go from like order to new order all the time. Like, this is what leaders want to do. I want to go from order to new order, but they forget the only way you get from order to new order is through chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So really, leadership is actually navigating chaos calmly. That's how you create change, because you cannot get from normal to new normal without navigating chaos.
No.
If the goal is new normal, be a chaos navigator.
Yeah.
And that is navigate chaos calmly. And we do it in many areas of our life, right? Air traffic control is chaos. The M25 is chaos, right? The subway system is chaos. The streets of London are chaos. The UK weather climate system is chaos. And we're all experienced of navigating that chaos because we're experienced practitioners. Mm-hmm. I think accepting that creating change is chaotic and stop trying to pretend it's easy.
Yeah.
And helping people find clarity through that process is a big responsibility. A huge myth that people have around the body of work, like Exactly What to Say, is they think the words are magic. They think, like, if I can just take an email, take these 23 sequences of words, plug them into the email's going to give me miraculous results. And it's not true. It's like going to a Las Vegas or where you can eat buffet and taking the contents of the buffet cart, sticking it in the smoothie maker and expecting it to taste good. It's a fool's game.
It's about the chef.
Yeah, and about knowing where to use the right pantry ingredients at the right time, about being able to sequence these things together and understand their tools for the job. I think it was Mark Twain that first said it. He said, if I had more time, I'd have written a shorter letter. And the book Exactly What to Say is a tiny read. You can get cover to cover in it in like 72 minutes. It is the most listened to nonfiction book on Audible in all time. And I think the reason that it holds that accolade is because people listen to it on repeat. Like, it has multiple plays. And it's not 23 sequences of magic words. It's 23 principles around influence and persuasion disguised as magic words. And I've learned through years of training organizations that if you try to teach people principles, they struggle to find examples. If you teach people examples, they trip over principles.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that, and that's what the examples of the words are. We can reach into any of them. And what I find universally fun is how applicable they are to all areas of life. And these aren't sales skills. These are helping find clarity skills.
100%. There's just a few that I wanted to touch, a few others I wanted to touch on. Again, a common theme in the work that I do is managing upwards. So maybe like mid to sort of coming into a sort of early senior level, managing upwards to C-suite. And it would be good to get your thoughts on this. As I was going through and I was reading them and, thinking of the different strategies you could use to influence a key stakeholder who is in a position of authority, and again, within environments and culture where that hierarchy is so important still, what strategies from the book could work in those types of situations?
So many. And then the thing that I would jump towards is the reminder that curiosity is a superpower. You can ask any questions you like if you're curious. And I'll grab the book, and like you could take every sequence of words and look at it in that scenario. I'd run the whole book through that lens. And the first sequence of words are a rejection-free opener, which are the words I'm not sure if it's for you, but so like managing upwards is like, hey, I'm not sure if it's for you, but I've got a few ideas of things we could do differently that might help us faster achieve blank. And they're like, tell me more. What I then might reach for is I might reach for words like open-minded and, well, how open-minded would you be to achieving blank? And they'd be like, yeah, I'd be well up for that. And I could then gain clarity and understanding about their current knowledge base by saying, well, what do you know about how ABC company are achieving X, Y, Z results? And they say, well, not enough. Or what do you know about the potential opportunities of using X, Y, Z people in ABC department to achieve ABC? They're like, not much. Now they've said they don't know enough. You can then ask a challenge-based question like, well, how would you feel if I shared with you blank? And they'd be like, I'd feel pretty darn good. What you can then do is paint a picture of a new idea to them. And you could say, well, just imagine if we could utilize those people in those departments to be able to achieve X, Y, Z. They'd be like, that would be freaking awesome. We're still managing upwards. I've got every example in the book. I'm like, then, well, I need to now actually nail this down. It's like, when would be a good time for us to formalize a plan around this so that we can execute? They're like, well, you take it, you run with it. Well, this is cool. And then I might say, well, I'm guessing you haven't got around to agreeing the budget for that initiative that we talked about yet. And then like, oh, yeah, sorry, let me bring that forward. What I then might look to be able to do is to say, look, at this point in time, we have three options. Like what we could do is that we could keep kicking this can down the road with the potential that it could help. And we could talk about it as being a maybe possible potential solution for the rest of the time. We could do that. Secondly, we could give up on the idea in its entirety and just accept the results we're getting right now are as good as the results we can get. Or by alternative is we could work through the challenges to get this plan executed and start to enjoy the benefits out of those three options. Which one do you think is going to work best for you? Because what I've learned is there are two types of people in these leadership roles. There are those that are interested in change and those that are committed to change. I'm like, oh, that's tough. And I bet you're a bit like me and that you'd much rather take responsibility for driving this forward rather than watching the opportunity pass us by. And if you are as committed as achieving these results as I am, then this seems like a great time for us to be able to execute this plan. And don't worry, I'm happy to take responsibility. And most people in your situations would never trust somebody like me with a project like this. So I'm remarkably grateful for you giving me that responsibility. And the good news is I won't let you down. So what happens next from here is I'm going to drop the plan, I'm going to speak to the team about it, and you're not going to have very much to be able to do with it. So all I've done is I've just take the book and I've worked through every example and I'm playing it in a management upwards.
It's fantastic. It's just fantastic to hear all of that in just such a flowing way. And
it's method, Helen, is what it is. It's method.
It's such a good example of, you can literally take anything and adopt these tweaks of ways of saying things, consciously harnessing the words that you use in a situation. And that example is perfect because there's going to be so many people. I'm going to literally just share this with all of my clients so they can hear that, to download the audiobook and listen to that over and over again. And not only that, it's not just about the book. You've also got a fantastic website with so many resources on it as well.
Yeah, we are committed to playing way bigger than the book. Our goal is to now spend the next decade playing bigger than the book and to help people raise their consciousness about what leaves their mouth. Like, we believe that the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment that you're saying it, and that curiosity is the fuel to great conversation, and people do things for their own reasons and not yours, and the person asking the questions controls the conversation. And I'm committed to help people learn how to be strategically more curious and how to actively demonstrate empathy and not confuse empathy and sympathy, and to find the courage to make big, bold asks without them feeling like big, bold asks. And we'll do that through our network of certified guides. We'll do that through the content that we create. And I believe the answer to every question is every problem in the world could be solved or certainly helped significantly if more people knew exactly what to say. I don't believe there is an issue in the world that cannot be helped with this work.
And I completely agree with you because it's, see everything that I do in a different way. But these strategies are just fantastic and something that anybody can pick up.
And great messages need multiple messengers, right? Like, that's the other thing here as well. Like, this isn't, oh, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. Like, I want to give the whole thing away. Like, let's just grow collective competence around conversations, and it's been forgotten. And we get like stuck into how do we shorten things and abbreviate things, and like showing somebody compassion on their birthday has now been dropped to HBD on a Facebook Messenger as an acronym, and we are losing compassion. And if I was to ask to predict where future trends are, is as the whole world gets excited about artificial intelligence, the real skill to be growing alongside those tools is emotional intelligence.
Absolutely, 100%. And
that's going to be the skill set that the workplace is going to miss the most in as little as 3, 5, 7 years.
Yeah.
Like we could literally lose it in the heart of an organization.
Yes.
Because we're trying to replace it with tools.
Yes, 100%. Verbal communication, the spoken word and dialogue.
Just conversation with emotion, whether typed, whether in video, whether on Zoom, whether in face-to-face, whether in email, just awareness that agreement and buy-in doesn't come from saying the right thing. And I've been asked and offered big money on numerous occasions to create chatbots and tools that help people know exactly what to say, and I've resisted consistently because one thing that technology cannot do is read moments. And until somebody can show me a piece of technology that can read a moment well enough and understand environment and context and all the outside data that is in existence but not in clear observation, we got human skills that are required. And I'm not saying that I disagree that AI tools are useful. They are. There are fantastic tools out there, and I love technology that allows us to even have this conversation today. But it isn't a substitute for emotional intelligence.
And very relevant for me. I'm on an intensive AI course at the moment, and I really agree with everything you're saying. Phil, I have loved this conversation, and it's gone so many different places, and something I'm going to listen back to many times. Your wisdom is magic, and it's really been an honor to listen and have this conversation with you. We're going to include all the links in the show notes and all of that great stuff. But for anybody who wants to get in touch with you, hear more about you, where's the best place to go?
If you're looking to just dig deeper into the work, come find exactlywhattosay.com, search the words exactly what to say anywhere you need them. And if you, by alternative, just want to share comment about this conversation and say, love to chat with Helen, or you've got some questions that you want to ask that weren't answered in today's conversation today, come find me on Instagram. I'm at Phil M. Jones UK. I'm fairly active there as well. And let me know that you heard from me here on this podcast, and I'll be as helpful as I possibly can for you from there.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Words That Change Lives. Please rate, review and follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really means the world and helps me to reach more people so that we can all harness the power of our words and change lives for the better.